Why was Hayden Panettiere's character kidnapped in The Good Student? That's one of the biggest questions surrounding the 2006 movie, because the film spends most of its runtime making you believe that Ronald Gibb, the unpopular history teacher played by Tim Daly, might simply be the unlucky man who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the ending changes everything. Hayden Panettiere plays Allie Palmer, a popular high school cheerleader who becomes the center of a bizarre kidnapping mystery. And the biggest twist is that the person we are supposed to suspect from the beginning really does have a connection to the kidnapping. The movie just hides exactly what that connection is. So why did Allie disappear? And why did Gibb take her? Let's go through the story and the ending. At the beginning of The Good Student, Ronald Gibb is presented as a lonely and deeply unhappy history teacher. His life isn't going particularly well. He is a widower, lives alone, and seems disconnected from almost everyone around him. His students aren't particularly interested in his history lessons either. But there is one student who has caught his attention. That student is Allie Palmer. Allie is popular, attractive, confident, and well-known in the local community because she has appeared in a television commercial for her father's car dealership. Gibb has a very obvious crush on her, and the important thing is that other people notice. His students notice, the school janitor notices. Gibb isn't simply admiring Allie from a distance. His interest has become obvious enough that people around him are uncomfortable with it. That immediately makes him the obvious suspect when Allie disappears. But before the kidnapping happens, Gibb's situation gets even worse. Allie has an argument with her boyfriend, Brett, and the two break up. Because Allie no longer has a ride home, Gibb offers to drive her. That decision becomes extremely important. During the ride, Allie spontaneously kisses Gibb on the lips. It happens after Gibb gives her an unexpectedly high grade. But the moment is photographed by another student who knows about Gibb's crush. The photograph becomes evidence that Gibb has crossed a professional boundary. The school board considers his behavior inappropriate and suspends him. Suddenly, Gibb has lost his job and his reputation. And then something even worse happens. Allie disappears. She goes missing shortly after Gibb drops her off at home. The police immediately focus on Gibb because he was the last person publicly known to have been with her. And from the audience's perspective, it makes perfect sense. He has a crush on her, he has already behaved inappropriately, he drove her home, and then she disappeared. But Gibb insists that he didn't kidnap her. The town begins treating him as a potential predator. The media gets involved. And Allie's father, Phil Palmer, turns the entire situation into a bizarre publicity opportunity. Phil owns a car dealership, and he uses his daughter's disappearance to generate attention for his business. Instead of simply behaving like a grieving father, he turns the kidnapping into a sales event. This is one of the movie's dark comedy elements. Everyone seems to have their own agenda. The police want answers. The media wants a story. Allie's father wants publicity. And Gibb wants to prove that he isn't the monster everyone thinks he is. But as the investigation continues, the movie starts giving us reasons to question almost everyone. Could Allie's boyfriend have something to do with it? Could her father have staged the kidnapping? Could someone else have targeted her? The movie deliberately creates uncertainty, and Gibb begins to look increasingly like an innocent man whose life has been destroyed by suspicion. He even becomes involved in the effort to find Allie. He offers a reward for information. He confronts people. And the more he tries to help, the more the audience can start believing that perhaps the police have simply chosen the wrong suspect. But this is where the movie's final twist becomes important. Because Gibb isn't completely innocent. The film eventually reveals that the kidnapping was connected to him. And the clues were actually there throughout the movie. One of the most important clues involves Allie's hair. The kidnapper takes a lock of Allie's hair before she is released. At the very end, Gibb is shown leaving in his vehicle and dropping that lock of hair out of the window. It's a subtle but disturbing confirmation of what the movie has been hiding. Gibb was not simply the innocent teacher everyone thought he was. He had been involved. But that raises another question. Why did he kidnap Allie in the first place? And this is where the movie becomes deliberately strange. The film never gives us a completely straightforward psychological explanation in the way a conventional crime thriller would. Instead, it suggests that Gibb's obsession with Allie, combined with his miserable and empty life, pushed him into creating this bizarre situation. Gibb wanted something to happen in his otherwise meaningless existence. He wanted excitement. He wanted to feel important. And his obsession with Allie provided the motivation. But there is another layer to the ending. Gibb doesn't simply kidnap Allie and disappear. He eventually becomes one of the people publicly associated with her rescue. In other words, he manages to become a kind of hero in the eyes of the community. That's what makes the ending so disturbing. The person responsible for the kidnapping is able to benefit from the situation. And Allie herself appears to believe that Gibb helped save her. The audience, however, knows more than she does. That creates the movie's final irony. The town sees Gibb as an innocent man who was unfairly accused. But the audience has just been shown evidence that he was actually involved. The final moments also connect this idea to Gibb's interest in Abraham Lincoln. The film uses the idea that there can be different versions of the same person, the public version and the hidden version. Gibb essentially presents himself as the good man, but there is another Gibb underneath, the respectable teacher and the darker person capable of kidnapping Allie. That is why the movie's title, The Good Student, becomes ironic. The story isn't really about a good student at all. It's about appearances. People believe what they want to believe, and Gibb is able to manipulate that perception. For most of the movie, everyone thinks the teacher is the obvious villain. Then, when the evidence against him appears to disappear, they begin thinking he's a victim. But the audience gets the final piece of information. He wasn't simply a victim. He was hiding something. There is also an important point about Allie herself. The movie doesn't suggest that she was kidnapped because she had done something wrong. She was targeted because Gibb was obsessed with her. She represented everything missing from his own life. She was young, popular, confident, and admired. Gibb's fixation on her became increasingly unhealthy. And once his life started falling apart, especially after his suspension, his obsession appears to become part of a larger fantasy. The kidnapping gives him a strange sense of control and importance. He can become part of the story rather than remain the forgotten teacher nobody cared about. That explains why the kidnapping is so unusual. There is no conventional ransom plot driving the story. The police are confused because there isn't a straightforward demand for money. And that's another clue that this isn't a normal kidnapping. The motivation is personal. It's connected to Gibb's obsession and his desire to create excitement in his otherwise stagnant life. The movie intentionally leaves some details ambiguous, which is why viewers have debated exactly how certain events could have happened. Some of the mechanics of the kidnapping don't hold up particularly well under close examination. For example, viewers have questioned how Gibb could have carried out certain parts of the kidnapping without being seen, and how Allie could fail to recognize some of the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. Those are genuine plot holes or ambiguities, rather than mysteries that the film fully resolves. But the broad twist is clear. Gibb is not innocent. He is connected to Allie's kidnapping, and the lock of her hair becomes one of the strongest pieces of evidence. That's what makes the ending so unsettling. The man everyone thought was being falsely accused turns out to have been hiding the truth. And instead of being punished immediately, he leaves the situation with his reputation largely restored. He has effectively manipulated the entire community. So, why was Hayden Panettiere's character kidnapped in The Good Student? Allie was kidnapped because Ronald Gibb had developed an unhealthy obsession with her and wanted to inject excitement and significance into his otherwise empty life. The kidnapping was not simply about money. It wasn't primarily about revenge. It was connected to Gibb's fixation on Allie and his desire to create a dramatic situation around himself. And the most disturbing part is what happens afterward. Gibb manages to appear innocent, he becomes involved in the search, he earns sympathy, and ultimately, people around him don't fully understand the truth.
Only the audience is given the final clue that reveals his darker side. That is why The Good Student ends on such an unusual note. It's not a traditional mystery where the criminal is caught and punished. It's a story about appearances.